risk is you got to have a balanced level of risk in everything in your portfolio. That's in your business, and that's outside of your business and your investments. That's also with all of your other decisions of what you're doing. Know where your risk levels are.
Welcome, everybody, to the KB article. I'm Chad Brown, along with my partner, Kyle Kintzler. KB article, the purpose for our podcast is to optimize the personal, individual well-being of individuals and small businesses. So we, from time to time, will come on solo and give a lesson or a discussion about something that has helped us as individuals, as entrepreneurs, in our lives to grow financially and both in personal development as well. And then we'll oftentimes bring on guests to discuss kind of their story and some lessons that they've learned along the way and approaches they take to their business. So without further ado, I'm excited to announce our guest today, Roy.
Royal, how do you pronounce your last name, Royal?
Mortier, like it's two words.
Mortier.
Yeah.
Okay.
Royal Mortier. Royal has an interesting story of working in the trades and transitioning to college and then creating a company prior to COVID with some very intentionality behind it. So, Royal, just kind of share a little bit about your story of going from construction and trades into engineering into really solving, from what I see, is a pretty big problem within that industry.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on. So really kind of started in construction at 15 and worked my way up through until I was working directly for a builder developer. Really was coming into a time when home construction was hitting my first initial bubble, when I'd be old enough to, really recognize it and know that about the real estate market. And really just saw that it was, during my time in the trades, I saw a couple things. One, I saw how unfortunately underserved home builders were by engineers. And there were engineers that got it and there were engineers that didn't. And most engineering firms just kind of took on residential jobs just to take on residential jobs and applied a lot of their standards and other stuff that really more pertain to the commercial level. And, in residential, you can smooth things out. You can make things a little more simplistic. And that's, that was an aspect of it. And so we had a lot of situations where, in the field, it was just very up and down of the quality of engineering or the quality of engineering we would get. I mean, we'd get something, you'd have two exact same houses and two engineers would engineer them completely differently. And it became very difficult. And then you had a situation of, I saw the market growing. I had sustained some injuries, and I just realized that I needed to make a career choice if I was going to stay doing construction or if I was going to go a different way. And so I decided to go engineering and pursued that. Now, I graduated with my engineering degree in 2009, which was a horrible time to be graduating with anything construction related. And then, so I graduated in 2009, very poor time and very poor timing. But luckily, during my younger years, I did serve in the Oregon Army National Guard. And so coming out of college, for military positions or working for a military branch, as a civilian, you got what's called military or a veterans preference. And so I was able to put in and get essentially some preference for a construction management role within one of the military branches, and worked my way up through that, and then was picked up by a private construction company that was doing government work, and worked for them for a bit. And then they decided they weren't going to be doing government, federal government work anymore. And so it was kind of well, that was my main background. And we worked on some other projects together and just realized that that wasn't fully what I wanted to be doing. And so I had an opportunity to come on with an engineering firm. It was actually an engineering firm that my grandfather had founded, but he was long retired from it. And so it was kind of cool to come on with them, and they were really struggling. So it gave an opportunity, an opportunity to come in with, everything I'd really worked with in the construction phases had all been with much larger companies that had a lot more structure, that had it had a lot of the processes built out. I had that experience and that exposure to, the easiest way I can put it, a well-oiled machine. The construction company I worked for, we did 250 million a year. So you don't do that if you're not organized. And so really it was just a matter of coming in there and implementing what I had been exposed to and working with what I could to get them to grow. But what I would say is the biggest thing that hurt them, that got them in a bad position, was their inability to decision make. And all of them were more concerned about the dollars they were getting that day versus the dollars they could be getting 5 years from now.
Right.
And the time they could be saving 5 years from now, and all of those aspects. So it really was, it was definitely a big thing in that, analyze it, make a decision quickly, and move forward.
So they probably, then you're there and they knew that you're this grandson, right? Within the organization type of thing. And then you go in there with all this background. And so it's kind of, for you, that's kind of an uneasy situation that you're walking. So you're kind of on pins and needles a little bit. But then you bring all this background that you have, with the large companies and such, and so it seems like you got kind of a quagmire going on there. And yeah, I can identify that. That had to be difficult for you. So
it was.
Like maybe you weren't with those guys too long then, or are you past them now, or is that where you're at right now with that organization?
No, I'm past them. They were a design engineering firm, and they also were a third-party building department. So they serviced jurisdictions that were, basically they serviced jurisdictions that needed support because they were so busy, or they were kind of in the jurisdictions, the cities were in this in-between where they were too big for the county to service them, but too small to have their own full building department. So they would contract with a third-party firm. And so that was the main brunt of their business, was definitely their third-party inspection firm, which, prior to my grandfather retiring, their engineering division was definitely the driving force of the entire company. So it was kind of when Grandpa retired and left, he was the main driver, and it really, turned everything on its head. And so, yeah, it was kind of interesting because basically I came into a company that had, at that time, almost 40 years in business. And essentially, when I came on with them, they couldn't even carry insurance. That's the situation they were in. They couldn't carry insurance. They were, significantly in debt. So it was basically like taking on a company that had a reputation, but was actually below square one in the fact financially and where they sat position wise. So it was interesting.
Well, with could only do 250 million because they were an organized company. They had systems and processes and methodologies to allow them to do that.
Right.
For years, it sounds like it was operationally sound with structure, but then upon his retirement, it just kind of, there was no leadership. Is that accurate?
Yeah, they definitely lost the decision maker, the kind of the pillar person, when he retired. And with that said, no discount to my grandpa, because he did a ton of amazing things. But when he was with the firm, he was unfortunately what a lot of smaller business owners do, which is they become the company. Right. They are the company, and then they fail to set up a real quality success, the people taking it on can what it took to build a company up to that, and then what it's going to take to continue to grow the company. And so, when I came on, I think the majority of the people that worked for the company were over the age of 50. A thriving, growing company without some young blood in there to push and drive and be innovative and strive for things. So, that was for me. It was definitely difficult to see what the company had become, or what the position the company was in, knowing this was something that my grandfather had built. But I took it as a challenge, and went, okay. And I basically just lined up what were the priority things that were keeping us from growing, and going and just attacking those until they were resolved. One of the ones that was a big decision. One of the biggest decisions, they had a person there that almost every other person on the board except for that person believed they should be fired, and had for over a decade, and nobody made a decision to fire that person. And it's like, well, why are they still here? Well, they did some things for the company that really helped us out. When?
Right.
1996. I'm like, okay, well, it's 2014. Like,
right.
What are we going to do? They tell me what you did 5 years ago. What did you do today? What,
Right.
What are you planning to do tomorrow? Because that 5 years ago, great. We're still moving forward. Time's the only thing that doesn't stop. So, there was that. There were multitude of other things which I don't want to dwell on and beat that.
No, and I think a lot of people can. I can certainly relate.
Yeah, the biggest issue is that you basically just had nobody. You had so many people in a decision maker position, nobody made decisions. And then you had a lot of people with what I will just refer to as extreme frugality, which extreme frugality, frankly, is worse than greed. Okay. Greed is basically, don't take the money. I'm not going to give you the money that I've earned. Extreme frugality is, I'm not going to use the money that I've earned to make my life or other people's lives better. That there's a big difference in that aspect. Okay. There's greedy people that live in very big fancy homes and drive fancy cars because they've invested well and they've not thrown their money at things that they don't feel like they should. There's extreme frugal people that basically think they can get rich through pinching pennies, and you can't. So.
That's a great point. So in this process of at big impact, and then if so or if not, what kind of stage of kind of going out and throwing out your own shingles?
Yeah, so it was kind of pushed upon, is the easiest way I can put it. The firm that I own now, PLIRIS, which we're 100% mobile engineering firm, engineering and design firm. Although we did just hire a licensed architect, but we're 100% engineering and design firm, residential engineering design firm, and we focus on home builders, and we also focus on house plan providers, in which we serve as the in-between service for these house plan providers. That idea came about while I was working for the engineering firm. And the starting of this idea and the starting of the company was actually to be as a subsidiary to the engineering firm. Because we had taken that engineering firm, and being in the position that it was in, where it was grossly in debt, barely making a profit, seriously aging staff. And we had grown that company in a matter of about 3.5 years to having no debt, having multiple, over half of the staff was was under the age of 30. And we had, fresh college graduates and even college interns working for us. We realized that we built up this clientele base that was very commercial heavy. So we were doing auto malls and schools and all these other things that, much larger firms typically handle. And we'd found some clients that were willing to trust us and give us the opportunity to do it, and we did well at it. And so, but with that said, for us to get to that point, I had to take on anything and everything for work that people would give us to try and create revenue. And with that being, we started servicing these home builders, and I found that a lot of these home builders were still being grossly underserved by engineers.
What is that?
And
when you say that, Royal, because you've brought that up three different times. I was going to ask the first time on it, but yeah, help explain that kind of what is that kind of maybe sets you apart different than the typical engineers working with home builders.
Right. So a lot of engineers, whether it's an architect or a house designer, they send an engineer a set of plans, and the engineer rolls through it and basically has his protocols and processes and calls out what he feels is necessary based on the imposed forces. And I mean, that's what we're trying to do. The easiest way to separate it is architects make it look pretty, engineers make it stand up. And
the structure-wise,
right?
A lot of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what happens is you get a situation where a lot of engineers, they're diving into it to such an nth degree and accounting for all of this, trying to resolve this, instead of looking at the entire structure of, okay, wait, I've got these walls here that will resist this, and these walls here that will resist that. And per code, the minimum nailings are these, and that has this much force resistance. So really, I don't need to go and call out a bunch of extra this and extra that, because just the minimum is per code is adequate to support the loading. And so you would get you get these designs that just had a massive amount of hardware specified, way excessive amounts of rebar called for, massive amounts of concrete, which just really drive up the costs. And
Right.
Then also these engineers just had no way of streamlining their processes. And so a home builder would submit their set of plans, and it could be months until they get them back. And your design for the concrete blows my concrete budget. Why is all this hardware needed? I did this house a year ago, and the beam was this size. Now it's this size. What changed? And so you had to work with where we're different is that when we start with a builder, we literally sit down with them and we have a 3-page SOP, and it starts at the dirt. And we go, okay, how do you guys form your foundations? Great. What's your typical number of rebar? Per the code, we can do this minimum number of rebar in the foundation. Do you guys want that, or do you want more rebar? Okay. Now we're going to go to the wall framing. What's your guys' typical wall framing? You can use 2x4s in the garage, or you can go 2x6. And we literally go through every aspect of the home construction. So that way we have this SOP developed of, this is how they typically want to build their foundations. This is how they typically want to build their walls. This is their typical floor systems. This is the hardware that they like to use. This is their truss vendors. So we can work with their truss vendors and optimize roof designs. And so we go through and we really work with them to not only get their projects to where they're engineered to support the loads, but they're also cost and constructability efficient. And we do that, and we go in that depth. And then once they're onboarded and we're running through them, our custom builders, where we're doing the engineering for them, we're contracted at 10 days. So from the time getting a plan, they're getting an engineered set back. And then for our builders that we have a full plan library with, that they're doing what we call a reproduction, which is, hey, we want plan number 2676 in this development, lot number, whatever. Here's, get this to us. We're turning those around in 24 to 48 hours. And so that's what I mean by basically doing it to where we saw a need, we're filling the need, and we're doing it efficiently, and we're doing it very efficiently for the client. And that's what I mean by builders were being underserved by other engineers.
Sure. No, that's fantastic. So I think your background that you have working with those other larger companies, and you talk about processes, people, they look at myself like I'm not a process person, but way down, deep down inside, I am a process person, because you got to have those in place in order to have a roadmap for everybody, right? So especially if you're trying to scale, now you're trying to work mobile, and you have all your people working mobile and that type of thing. So if you didn't have those processes, in place, boy, that'd be awfully difficult. So no, congratulations to you. I mean, that sounds fantastic.
That's
a long way.
No, thank you.
It's an awesome story, and I know you're successful at it. But essentially, what you did is you cost most times through the process and engineered a solution, and now it's just like clockwork, and that can fit with so many other type businesses, right? We sometimes make things harder than they really can be, but you step back, looked at the overall picture and the inefficiencies, and created a solution. And like Kyle said, and we mentioned before, this right prior to COVID, with the intentionality of being a mobile business. Can you go into that just for a little bit and kind of tell us why you did that? Was that a lifestyle thing? Was that just a need for employees to be everywhere so you could recruit? Why did you do that, and what was the intention behind that?
Yeah, so it was interesting with my prior firm because we had, with us being a third-party building inspection company, we service cities hours and hours away from our headquarters. And so we had remote workers. And what I always thought was interesting is, my in-office workers and my engineers especially were paid more, were given, were paid more, were given tons of freedom throughout their day, but they had to come into an office. And then their office, the average cost per head in the office was something like $2,200 a month per desk space. That's a significant amount of overhead. That's over and above their salary and everything else. And then you had the situation of you asked for anything over and above, and it was like pulling teeth, and they weren't as happy. We'd give them bonuses, and they would almost scoff at the size of the bonus, and it was just really off-putting. In that it was rough. Is the easiest way I can say it. And then I compared that to the people that I had working remotely, who were typically oftentimes waking up at 5 a.m, getting on their computer or jumping on we had a computer log system where basically people could submit their inspection requests to. They jump on their computer at 5 a.m, get all of their inspections for the day, put them into a Google map so they could optimize their path, which would be, oftentimes 4 or 5 hours of driving throughout the day, get everything all laid out, address any emails that came in late the night before, get ready for the day, head out the door, and then go hit all their cities, and oftentimes not get home until 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and, had that freedom out there. Our profit margins on them were far, far higher. And, if I asked them for anything over and above, it was no argument at all. They would put in the extra work. They would work on the weekends. It wouldn't even be a question. And they would work late nights. And if I gave them anything, they were massively grateful. And so it was just this massive separation of personality. And it was of just how they reacted. And I was like, well, is this not to, I'm an engineer myself, so I don't want to bash this. I'm like, is this an engineer entitlement thing? Or is because, hey, I got a degree, so therefore I feel like I'm better? Or is this just because, hey, I'm actually able to have some work-life balance and be at home and do these things, you know, and they would just be able to, if they had to do extra work, they could kind of fit it in during the day or during the night with their other stuff that they wanted to be doing and do these things. And I'm like, and then my overhead is almost nothing, so I can pay these people more and I can give them more benefits and I can give them bigger bonuses. And, you know, I can do all these things for them and it all works out. And so when I started really coming up with the concept of it, it was for the simple fact of I wanted my people to have a life and I wanted to have a life, you know? And so I made the comment, I posted it previously, and it was, you know, I started a 100% mobile company because I wanted memories of watching my kids grow up, not of commutes to the office and happy hours.
Oh, that's awesome. And, you know, we see
so that's
business. I think we cut out, you know, within our business, we got the retail side, so it's hard to be remote. But during the non-busy season, we provide a little bit with our accounting and bookkeeping side. We do a lot of remote workers, and you're 100% spot on. And I think it has to do with they can control more of their time while still providing more productive time for you, right? So it's not that waste. Like you said, they can go to events, they can do things in their lives around their kids, their family, their hobbies, but still get the work done. That adds just a sense of relief, I think, to folks in 5, you know, that 8 hours or 9 hours a day where they feel like they're owned if they're inside the walls, and it gives them a little more flexibility. So I love that. That's awesome. But you're 100% remote, and I think just to wrap this piece up is outside of the year you're traveling, right? You said?
Oh, we travel like crazy. Yeah, we travel like crazy. And I encourage every single one of my team members to travel. I give you all a laptop. I'll give you every single one of you a second screen if you want it. I'll give you a mobile hotspot. Go see the world. Like,
yeah, good.
Yeah.
You mean travel for pleasure, not for work then, right? You saying?
Yeah.
You encourage that. Or I love that. I love that.
So, yeah.
You just gotta, I mean, I think sometimes people, they look out like when you're away from the office. I think personally myself, I think that being away from the offices actually made people more accountable that were at location sometimes. So in order to separate that, actually kind of made them kind of uphold their side of things. So there's something to be said about that. So that's good.
Yeah, it's huge. And it does take a certain personality, and it does take a lot of structure. We have a massive PM system that we've developed. And it literally runs everything through the processes. But I mean, literally every single person knows exactly what their next task is once they're done with it. And if something jumps in the priority line, we're able to go in and adjust that. The communication with our team is exceptionally well. Way better than I would think in an office. They can bring it up on their screen. I can see their screen. I mean, we just pinpoint everything, and it makes it so much more efficient. And like I said, I've got a single mom that works for me. She's got 2 kids that are highly involved in sports. She hasn't missed a single sporting event. You know,
nice.
She's a runner. She hasn't missed a single marathon she's wanted to run it. I mean, it's that kind of lifestyle.
Right.
So that's awesome.
You want to go anyplace else?
Yeah.
Right.
There's something to be said about that. That's for darn sure.
Hey, before we,
I was going to ask you about the 4 Fs and stuff like that you want to elaborate on and stuff. I didn't know exactly what they were, and I was going to write them down, I looked to see what the 4Fs were, and there's a lot of different 4Fs. But what are your 4Fs that you go by for your lifestyle and stuff?
Oh yeah, so I'm not going to take full credit for it because it's really, it's a situation of I'm part of a men's group and it's something that we prioritize. We prioritize a lot, and that's fitness, family, finances, and future, or future / freedom, as I put it. So you could kind of say there's 5 Fs, but what we talk about is fitness is number one of that, because if you don't have your health, none of the other stuff matters. And so, if you're not healthy, you can't make more money and you can't spend time with your family. So you don't really have much of a future. So,
Right.
So fitness is definitely number one, which Chad, I saw you're keeping up on the 100 burpees a day. So that's awesome.
But I had to throw this out there, full disclosure for everybody. I am doing 100 burpees a day for maybe 100 days. Royal put that challenge out there when evidently the universe was telling me I needed something to get off my rear after doing 75 hard, and then putting on 10 pounds during our busy season. So yeah, I'm on day 32. Are you still doing that?
Yeah, I had a super hard leg workout and literally been doing the shuffle. So my legs are finally back under me. So I missed 2 days, but I'm going to play catch up.
Okay. It's a grind.
I'll do 100. Yeah, I'll do 150 to 200 for the next couple of days to get caught up, and then be back on the path. But
somebody asked me, said, about the burpees, and because they saw I was doing the challenge, I said, man, they never get, they might get a little easier, but you dread them. It's not something you really ever look forward to. They said, well, why do you still do it? I said, because I'd much rather do something I'm not looking forward to do than not complete it.
Yeah.
Right. That's the driving force. So if maybe, you might not like doing it. You might not like that grind, whatever it is. It might be hard right now, but side of that is the regret of not completing it. And I think that hurts more than actually doing the work. Right. So that's kind of what I taught. It keeps me going with the burpee.
Was there a cause behind the 100 burpees a day? Was it a platform? Or just to go and do it?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember where I came up with it, but I think I was
Did you come up with it?
Yeah. I think I'm the first person that I know of that's talked about it. And I was like, hey, let's just do it. I'm like, because where it came from is, I remember Jocko talking about using 100 burpees as being able to do 100 burpees in 10 minutes as like a good gauge of somebody's physical performance. And I was like, okay, well, I would love to get my time under that 10-minute threshold. And, I'm doing jujitsu. The sprawl is part of, jujitsu and everything. And like, this is all couples in. I'm used to doing sprawls and push-ups and everything. I'm like, let's see where I can get. And I remember I'm like, I did it. And, the first few days I got to maybe like 70 or 80, and I felt like I was in good shape. And I got to 70 or 80 and I was like, oh dear God, like, no, stop. I was at like 15 minutes by the time I hit 80.
Oh God.
And then get better at it. And so I was like, for 100 days. And by the end of it, my fastest, so I separate strict and speed. So strict is actually doing the full push-up at the bottom. Speed is doing the full sprawl, chest to the ground, and then pushing yourself back up and jumping up. So speed, I actually got sub 6 minutes. And strict, I think my fastest was like 7 minutes and 13 seconds or something like that.
So describe that again, the speed versus strict, just for my knowledge. And I didn't know anything about and I'm going to hate you for saying that, because now it's going to be like, okay, you've done it for 32 days, but you haven't timed yourself yet. So right?
Yeah.
What is the speed and the strict again?
Speed was the push-up,
so strict is basically you drop down into a high plank, you do a full strict push-up, and then you jump your feet back up and do your jump. That's a strict. A speed is you jump and you basically, like a wrestling sprawl, you go all the way chest to the ground, and
In one
then
fell
you
swoop.
push yourself up and jump. Huh?
Well, it's kind of like the football drill.
Yeah. So you just
6
full
minutes.
sprawl all the way chest to the ground. No down. 6 minutes. Yeah. Yeah. I was flying.
Good
That
for
was
you. Good
that.
for you.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But now I just got to get back into it to where I think I can still do, I'm sub 10, but I'm barely sub 10.
Yeah.
See, I haven't timed. I've been doing it as part of circuits. I'll do like 5 sets of 20, but you know, in my circuit, I'll do 5 burpees, 5 jumping jacks, you know, 5 air squats, 5 jump squat, whatever it is, and then I'll just kind of repeat.
Yeah, and that's
done within like 20 minutes. Now you got me excited, but now I got something else, and Kyle's here to attest to it. That now he's going to hold me accountable to it.
I want a recording of you. I mean, that'd be great. See how long it takes you to do a recording for the full 100, and then 30 days later.
All right. My most at one time was, I think, 50. Was 50, but then it was hard to do the others. But anyway, let's move on. We're talking enough burpees.
We like this stuff. So that's cool.
Fitness and then finance.
Yeah.
So it all starts with the fitness.
Yeah. So fitness, finance. Yeah. So fitness first, definitely fitness, because you got to have that together. Really, family is number 2, because the fact is you got to have your family together. You got to have your family in order, and the family is what's going to give you everything else to push forward. Because if you don't have your house in order, how are you going to get out there and make money? How are you and your spouse going to be on the same page to invest correctly, to where you're supporting each other and you're understanding and knowing where you guys want to be putting your money in? And so, you know, the finance comes number 3. And then if you've got your fitness, your family, and your finances in order, well, guess what? That's the quality of your future and your freedom. So that's how that goes.
Oh, I love it. You also mentioned a concept kind of when we were talking before, decision-making process that you go through, called the profits model. Can you describe that briefly?
Yeah. So there's two things that I do, because I get sent, I get sent easily 50 plus real estate deals a day. I mean, the easiest way you can put it, you know, and I'm willing to invest in real estate nationwide. And so it's you got to have a quick way of analyzing them, to things that really spark your interest. I mean, anybody can put everything into a spreadsheet, but the fact is you got to have a quick way to sift through them. Not to mention, you know, I run this business, and I've got a development company, and I've got a family that I'm very involved in, and multiple other things. You know, I got to be able to make decisions quick, and especially with as many people. I mean, I've now got people on my team ranging from the West Coast to Singapore. You know, I've got people on different time zones. I got to make decisions quickly for them as well as for our clients. So the first part of the decision making is hell yes or no. There is no maybe. There's never a maybe. If it's a maybe, it's a no. There's never been a time ever in my decision-making process where I went into it as a maybe, wasted the time, then tried and then not regretted it later. So hell yes or no, and that's just what it is. So I mean, that gives you a very, very quick, just cut right through it. Too many people hang out in maybe land, and they waffle and they think, oh, well, we could do this, or oh, we could do that, or oh, we could do that. Cool, pick one. Like, because the law of physics, you know, I
hate maybe land.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Maybe land is Death Valley. That's where decisions go to die. And if you make it a yes, you're going to regret it. And if you make it a no and then it succeeds later, you're going to regret it. So just make it a no. Don't waste your time with it and never go back to it. It's that simple. The profits model is something I came up with because, as I talked about earlier, you know, the frugality and the greed, the extreme frugality and the greed. I want to look at something that has nothing to do with money, nothing to do with numbers, everything to do with your lifestyle and who you are and who your family is. Okay. And so what the profits model, the profits model is actually an acronym. And like I said, it has nothing to do with money. Profits stands for pain, risk, ownership, fear, ikigai, time, and spouse. Okay. So pain is as simple as, how much am I going to have to put into this?
Right.
What is my pain? What is my pound of flesh that I have to put into this? You can weigh that. I typically weigh that in time, because my time is the most valuable asset to me. I typically weigh that in time. I don't weigh that in money, but it's what I have to put into it. And then, how much I actually am capable of giving, tolerance. And that's something, and I do that through blocking out my days, my weeks, and knowing how much time I actually have to give to something extra. And if I start maxing out my pain tolerance, then I know I need to either figure out a way to offload something, either through hiring somebody or selling an investment, or delegating something to somebody. But I always know where my pain tolerance is. Risk is you got to have a balanced level of risk in everything in your portfolio. That's in your business, and that's outside of your business and your investments. That's also with all of your other decisions of what you're doing. Know where your risk levels are. Okay. Balancing that risk, and that's going to change throughout your life. It's no different than like your retirement plan, right? So if I set up a retirement plan or an investment account when I'm everything on black, right? I'm going, I want to, and see how much I can get back, because I've got length of time on my side. So let's go everything as high risk as possible and see what kind of reward I can get. But that's going to change over time. Not to mention, as you go forward, you want to balance that level of risk with other things. Ownership is exactly that. You don't have to go it alone. Okay. There are times with deals, business decisions, that I do bring somebody else in on that business decision. I do bring somebody else in on that deal. Somebody that complements me or has experience that I don't have, that is going to help me in the ownership of that decision and the ownership of that investment. And that's key. Too many entrepreneurs go into it and feel that they're out there on this lonely island. They have to go it alone. No, bring in those other people. That's where these masterminds are so valuable. I mean, I got what, a couple thousand people a message away for me to pick their brains on something that they are probably an expert on and I know little about. And I can bring them in on that decision, or I can talk, if it's an investment deal, I go, okay, who knows something about this? I'm about to buy a storage unit. It's about to buy a storage unit. PLIRIS owns over 1,000 storage units. Guess what? He's a phone call away. He gave me ownership in that. He came in and was an owner in that decision. So have that available.
So you did do a storage unit then?
That one I couldn't get the funds ready in time. Somebody came in all cash and beat me out. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of storage unit complexes.
So we're looking at one right now.
The F is fear, right? Most entrepreneurs have a high fear factor, right? But you need to know where that is. And there's different levels in this game. Flat out, there's different levels in this game. There's always different levels. I train jujitsu, train with black belts. There's a wide level of black belts, right? Same thing in the entrepreneur game. There's a wide level of fear factors in the entrepreneur game. Okay. Ikigai is a Japanese term, and you guys probably heard it, but basically it's a balance of passion, mission, vocation, and profession. And basically what that breaks down to is what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. Okay. So when I started PLIRIS was my ikigai, right? I love home construction. I love construction. I'm an engineer. I've worked in the home building trades, so I feel like I'm good at it. The world needed, I saw it as a need. I knew that I saw this need and I took advantage of it, and I can be paid for it. So with that, my ikigai, right? So that's a good balance of everything. Again, money doesn't come anywhere into these equations. Okay.
That's
T
what I like
is
most
for time.
about it. I do. So go ahead, but I'm
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
I mean, that's the thing is, so many entrepreneurs and investors, let me pull out my spreadsheet. Let me pull out my calculator. What's my NOI? What's my ROI? Does this go with your life? How does that sound? right? Do you want to, like, my wife really wants an RV park. Well, cool. An RV park is a business. It's not a piece, it's a piece of real estate, but it's a business.
Right.
It's going to take a lot of time. You know, if you got 100 spots, you have 100 different guests pretty much every single night, 365 nights a year, right? You know, that's a lot.
Florida.
Do the math. That's that many
It's not a
different people
hobby.
and personalities that you have to deal with. Not a hobby, right?
That'd be fun for about 3 days, man. In my book, I don't know. Can't say I haven't wanted to do that before.
Right. So that's, you know, it's also I want to support my RV park, but you know, business, it's a passive thing. It's a very active thing.
Right.
So T is for time, which is how long will it take to get to what you consider that decision being a success, to where you think that investment being a success. And you need short range and long range, right? Cash flowing assets are amazing. Cash flowing assets are fantastic because really you're making money over time. And like say it's not timing of the market, it's time in the market, right? But other decisions, maybe that's not the case. Maybe it's not a cash flowing asset and you need to get to something very quickly to benefit the most from it. So, and then the last one is S is spouse, right? And I say, you know, I call it the profits model, but I feel like the S should be first, but then it's profit, right? So, so I just organize this to where it makes it. So
Spouse is last.
right. So, and so that's where it comes into fact is that S is really first, and that is you need everything I just talked about, P through T. You need to know that for your spouse as well. And here's the thing, if you're not married, think about it in the terms of what kind of spouse your decisions are going to attract, or if that would turn off somebody that you may want to consider for a spouse. You know, my comment on that is like, hey, you can make a lot of money selling weed and owning adult shops. Are you going to get a spouse that you want selling weed and owning adult shops, right? So that's where it's at. So it's make decisions, make investments that are going to align with the values and the type of person that you want to attract as your partner in life. So, and then if you do have a spouse, make sure you're making those decisions just the same way.
That's awesome. I love love it. I mean, we could probably do a separate podcast on each one of the letters for each of those. That's good stuff. 30,000 foot view of it. But how long ago did you come up with that? Has it been something that you?
Yeah, I mean, it's I crafted it. You probably used what's called a VTO, a vision traction organizer. And I basically just looked at this and went, okay, where, you know, I didn't go into being an entrepreneur for the money. I didn't develop a mobile company for the money. Do I make good money? Sure. But I've got everything I want. So that, you know, it's how can I analyze this stuff quickly and be on the same page? And the biggest thing, like I said, you know, the pain, having that pain tolerance, where that pain tolerance sits at, which is what you actually have to give, and having the spouse on board. I mean, the first and the last are probably the most important of all of them. So.
Well, good stuff. Well, hey, we're close to wrapping up. Royal, I want to thank you for the time, man. That's a lot of good information shared, where I know the listeners will get a couple of nuggets out of there that they can act on or implement to help with their personal development or in their business and their growth and financial well-being. So we appreciate your time. Any parting words you'd like to share with the listeners before we go?
No,
where can they reach out to you? Where can they find you? Are you on social media?
Yeah, so you know, my company is PLIRIS or PLIRIS Plans. So we're you search PLIRIS or PLIRIS Plans on Instagram. We're on Instagram or Facebook. We're launching our own podcast here shortly called the Build Better Homes podcast. And we'll be talking a lot, not only about home construction, but also just your own personal home. You know, how do you lead a home better? How do you prepare things financially? We'll obviously be talking about the profits model. You and then if you want to, if you're a home builder or you're looking to build a home, feel free to look us up at PLIRISplans.com, and we can gladly help you there.
Well, Royal, we appreciate your time. And guys, if you like this episode, you got some good information that Royal shared, please act on it, implement it, and be sure to share the program so others can exposed to some of the knowledge he dropped on us today. So again, thanks a lot, guys.
Hey, thank
All
you.
right. Thank you so much, Royal. You have a great day. Appreciate it.
You too, sir.
See you later.